Namaskar. So I'm indeed very happy to have this session with Atharva Forum on a topic which is very, very dear to my heart. Kavyakaṇṭha, Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, his life and works. One of his biographies written by his foremost disciple, Brahmashri Kapali Shastri. That biography is known as Vāsiṣṭha Vaibhavam, and it's entirely in Sanskritam. I knew Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni as a very accomplished avadhani. Avadhani means he had the ability to contemplate simultaneously on various topics and then answer the questions of many people by creating extempore poetry. Avadhan is an ancient art of multiple concentration. It's a literary feat, and at present also there are very few people who were capable of doing this avadhana. He was the first and foremost disciple of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. So in 2002, K. Notation, one of the disciples of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, he came to meet me, and then we had a long discussion, and then he told me when he came he was around 90 years old, and then he told me that look, as a disciple of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, my work has been to preserve whatever Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni had created in form of writing those in my notebooks. These are my notebooks, and these are copies of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni's handwritten texts. I have an aspiration to see one of the books in printed form. And what he handed over to me, it was not just the content for one book. When I sat through the entire content that he had given me, I planned a series of 11 volumes to accommodate all the writings of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni. Enormous amount of work Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni wrote in Sanskritam. The work started every day spending 6 to 8 hours. By 2009, I could manage completing 11 volumes in printed forms. Then I handed over the 11th volume in the month of February 2009 to Sri K. Notation. He asked me how many more volumes are pending. The 12th volume is going to be just the index volume, which I will take more time to prepare it. He was by that time, I think 98 years old. And then he told me, then what's the point of my being here if my work is over? So it thus happened that in the month of March, K. Notation left his body. I thankfully expressed the deep sense of gratitude to the divine that the work that was assigned to me, that it could become complete before K. Notation passed away. Now the question comes, who this Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni was. Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni was the first and foremost disciple of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, whose ashram is there in Tiruvannamalai, Tamil Nadu. So Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, he was born on the 17th of November 1878 in a village called Kalavarai in the district of Visakhapatnam. And his birth was also a kind of mystery. If anyone is interested, can go through his biography, interesting biographies, and especially there is a biography called Mahatapasvi. Many interesting facts about his life could be explored and known about his mysterious birth, about his association with the Indian politics, about his writings, and about many aspects of his life are well depicted in that biography called Mahatapasvi. He was well educated at home by his father, Narasimha Shastri. He had entry into all kinds of shastras. He studied, not only studied, he contemplated, not only contemplated, he lived every aspect of the Shastric tradition, and he was a living epitome of the Shastras. At the same time, the speciality of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni was that he was not an orthodox Pandit. Well versed in all Shastras, he always expressed something new. He linked the Shastric tradition, he linked the past with the present, and he believed in a greater future of Bharat and worked from that angle how a new Bharat can be created based on the foundations created by the ancient seers and sages. Most of his writings are futuristic and very much conducive to the present age, yet holding the foundation intact, not deviating from the foundational principles of the ancient seers and sages. So this is a little bit of introduction to Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, who himself was a mighty spiritual personality with a complete mastery over the Sanskrit language, a yogi, a poet, a philosopher, a critic, a scholar, an eloquent speaker, and an ardent devotee of Bharat Mata. So much of love he had for Bharat Mata. He worshipped. He did his entire tapasya. He dedicated the punya of his tapasya for the release of Bharat Mata from the hands of many forces which were torturing the Bharat Mata. In fact, he had written to his Guru, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, many times, and all his letters to Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi were written in Sanskrit. In fact, anyone going through these letters can also learn the art and science of writing letters, beautiful letters, in Sanskrit. How he was, focused on the content, very precisely could give expression to what he was thinking, what he was feeling. He used to write to Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi that I have done all that is to be done, that intense tapasya to see Bharat Mata free. Yet I don't know why it is not happening. Do let me know. If I have to do something more, I am ready to accept all kinds of intense tapasya and I want to see the Bharat Mata free from the hands of the Britishers. Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, he has contributed immensely in many fields of knowledge. One of his writings is known as Samrajya Nibandhanam. Very few people know about this text. It's a rare text. He was concerned about the freedom of India from the hands of Britishers, but he was more concerned, once this freedom happens, how is India going to be ruled? So in 1934, all alone, he created a constitution for India containing 560 sutras. The entire text is written in sutra style. The title of this text is Samrajya Nibandhanam, based on the Dharma Shastras, based on the ancient Smriti Shastras. He has created this text which is yet to be translated, yet to be interpreted, yet to be studied, yet to be annotated, but a very important text which can contribute very positively towards the refinement or bringing any kind of amendment or restructuring the Constitution of India. Amongst all the different works that he has created, his devotional literature, the Stotra Kavyas, are huge. So out of the 11 volumes, 3 volumes are entirely dedicated for containing his Stotra works, the stutis, the devotional literature dedicated to different gods and goddesses, different deities that he has composed. So one of the compositions is known as Indrani Saptashati. So Saptashati means containing 700 verses, and the entire work is dedicated, is an invocation to Indrani, the feminine aspect of, or the Shakti aspect of Indra. So these 700 verses are divided into 7 centuries, 7 shatakas, and each shataka is further divided into 4 stavakas. So stabaka means a smaller section. So 4 stabakas, each stabaka containing 25 verses, and 4 stabakas, 100 verses. So like this we have 7 shatakas. So 700 verses, that is why it is known as Indrani Saptashati. He has praised, he has invoked, he has given elaborate description of who Indrani is. But the importance of this composition, especially from the point of view of Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni's love for Bharat Mata, is that in each stavaka, every second and 24th verse are entirely dedicated for the protection of Bharata Mata. So we have 28 stavakas, and in each stavaka we get 2 verses entirely dedicated for the protection of Bharata Mata. Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni had 3 primary goals in his life to achieve. The first and foremost goal was the recovery of the Vedic wisdom, the Vedika Dharma, the Vedika Upalabdhi, the realizations of the seers and sages of the Veda, the recovery of that spiritual force, the recovery of the Sanatana Dharma through the words of the seers and sages. That was his first and foremost aim. The second aim was that to work for the betterment of Bharat Mata in all possible manner. The third aim was to fight against the untouchability. And all these based on his own sadhana, his own tapasya, his own spiritual experiences, and all these are dedicated for the betterment of Sanatana Dharma, for the protection of Sanatana Dharma, the Vaidika Parampara, for the protection of Bharat Mata. So it thus happens that if we go back to his life a little bit, how did it all begin? So, educated by his father, well versed in all the Shastras, he is not finding any kind of happiness, which reminds us the story of Narada approaching to Sanat Kumara that look, I have studied all the Shastras, I am well versed in all the Shastras, yet there is no happiness. I cannot enjoy anything in life in spite of being well versed in all the Shastras. So I know that only the Atmavit, the knower of the self, can experience the eternal happiness and eternal peace. But my Shastra, my study of the Shastra, my knowledge of the Shastra has not yet given me that Atma Jnanam, that self-knowledge, that Atma Bodha. So please guide me, please help me. This is where Sanat Kumar comes to the help of Narada in initiating him to the Atmajnana. The same way, Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni approaches Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. In fact, when he approached, that time he was known as Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. This name was not there. He was known as Brahmana Swami. And this Brahmana Swami was junior to Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni. He approached in the same manner, being well versed in all the Shastras, yet there is something else which need to be achieved. And this is where he sought guidance from Brahmana Swami, and then he felt the Guru in him. He accepted him as his Guru. So that is how Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni was the first and foremost disciple of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. And when he discovered his Guru, so he declared to the whole world this Brahmana Swami to be known as Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. This is the name which was given by Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni. And as a gratitude to the divine for helping him finding out his Guru, so he started composing a poem called Uma Sahasram. This Uma Sahasram has 1000 verses entirely dedicated to goddess Uma, to whom Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni is expressing his gratitude for giving him a guru like Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. And there are many beautiful stories and anecdotes connected with this composition of Uma Sahasram, which is the magnum opus of Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni. And Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, after he composed these 1000 verses, he kept revising it for few times. And this poem, his disciple Kapali Shastri has written a Sanskrit commentary on it, which is printed and published. So with the help of Kapali Shastri's commentary on Uma Sahasram, so many unknown aspects of the tantric sadhana, many unknown aspects of the Shakti Aradhana, the Shakta way of worship and expressing one's own gratitude or describing or praising the Shakti Mata. All these different aspects are known through this poem and especially through the commentaries of Kapali Shastri. There's a very interesting anecdote when a copy of this Uma Sahasram was sent to Sri Aurobindo through one of his disciples. So it seems that Sri Aurobindo had gone through this entire poem and then he had expressed that it is a magnificent poem. It is a superhuman performance and he must meet the poet. This is what is the significance of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni's magnum opus Uma Sahasram, which is a wonderful composition of 1000 verses entirely dedicated to goddess Uma. And there is still another interesting anecdote connected with this, that he had made a sankalpa to complete the composition in 20 days. Just imagine a poem of this statue and completing it within 20 days. And the time was running and it was the last day, yet 200 verses were to be composed. So he didn't know how to do that, but yet he had few disciples whom he called, and then he started dictating different verses of different types to different disciples sitting in front of him. So he was dictating, and the other disciples were writing. Like he would dictate one disciple one verse on one aspect of Uma, another disciple another aspect. So by the time one disciple completes his writing, so he will be reciting another verse to another disciple. So this is how he completed in few hours. So 200 verses. And then when he had gone to meet Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, expressing his gratitude that the work is completed, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi said that, okay, all that I said to you now were recorded properly. It means that he was so much united in his consciousness with his Guru that all that was happening through was actually coming from Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. That is how he was able to compose and complete the work for which he had made a sankalpa and offered it as an as a gratitude to his guru. So going back a little bit, that we are using this word all the times, Kavyakaṇṭha, Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni. So how did he receive his title as Kavyakaṇṭha? Now, Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni was a kind of wandering monk. He never got settled at any place. And right from the beginning, right from his young age, he kept on traveling into different places in India and lived in different places in India. For example, like he went to Bhubaneswar and then lived there for some time. He went to Kanchipuram, he went to Varanasi, he went to different places to spend time. And then wherever he went, he spent his time in sadhana, in tapasya, and composed many things and left it with his disciples, whoever accompanied him. So in the same way, when he was informed that in Kashi, he was in Kashi, in Varanasi. So he heard during that time that there is a kind of Hari Sabha which was getting organized in Navadvipa in Bengal, where the scholars are invited to show their scholarship. It was a kind of examination or a kind of test where each one's scholarship was to be examined. So in Navadvipa in Bengal, so on the advice of a few of his friends, so he got a letter of introduction to from some of his friends, and then he went and attended that Hari Sabha in Navadvipa. So it was this occasion when scholars, many high level scholars of different parts of the country had assembled there to showcase their scholarship. And the point is that more one excels in showcasing one's own scholarship, he would be given that kind of status or some kind of upadhi, some kind of uh, epithet will be added to that person by the judges of that Harisabha. Now, Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, so he had gone there, and then it's a wonderful dialogue which has been recorded by Kapali Shastri in Vāsiṣṭha Vaibhavam. Whatever happened, all the different questions which were asked to Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, and the way he answered those questions, so everyone was mesmerized. Everyone was mesmerized by his scholarship, and the scholarship of such a young person. His mastery over the language, his mastery over the poetry, his mastery over poetics, his mastery over grammar, and his mastery over various shastras, everyone was mesmerized. And that is where he was declared to be one of the greatest scholars of the country, and then he was given the title Kavyakantha. So that is where he came to be known as Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni. And the Muni, after the Kashish visit and then the visit to Navadvipa, so he returned to south, uh, and then this is where in 1907, where he was living in Kanchipuram, and then from Kanchipuram he went to Arunachal, and he did tapas, and then in 1907 he was actually running a patshala, and then he resigned from his job, and then he returned to Tiruvannamalai, Arunachal, and then that Muni, who always felt that the purpose of his life was not fulfilled. So this is where this great meeting between Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni and Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi took place on 18th of February 1907. And the Muni approached this Brahmana Swami. Now, the Brahmana Swami became Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. And that time, Brahmana Swami was staying in a cave called Virupaksha cave, where the Muni went, prostrated himself at his feet, and prayed to him that please enlighten me about the nature of tapas. So he silently looked at him, and please note that for 11 years, this Brahmana Swami had never spoken a single word. He was maintaining the silence for last 11 years. Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi broke his silence and then said to him, if one watches oneself, if one watches where is the notion of I springing from, the mind will be absorbed into that, and that is tapas. If a mantra is repeated as a part of the tapas, if a mantra is repeated and attention is directed to the source where from that mantra sound is produced, the mind will be absorbed into that silence of the mantra, that source of the mantra, that essence of the mantra, and that is tapas. This is how the Guru Shishya met with each other, and then the sadhana continued. As I mentioned, that very little is known about the enormous writings, especially the Sanskrit writings. The Muni, Kavyakaṇṭha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, always spoke in Sanskrit. Whatever he wrote in Sanskrit. Very rarely he spoke in Telugu or any other Indian language. He spoke, or sometimes even he has written something in Telugu, but maximum of his writings are in Sanskrit. And he never used, being a Swadeshi, very staunch Swadeshi, and then fighting for the freedom of Bharat Mata. He never learnt English. He didn't have any hatredness towards that, because a yogi, a tapasvi, a rishi will never have any hatredness for something. Yet, he never learnt it. He didn't know how to write or recognize the English letters. Yet, if someone used to read a passage in English to him, he could reproduce that exactly, and he could grasp the meaning behind the language. He wrote almost on every topic. Maximum number of his writings, they are the stotra writings, around thousands and thousands of verses he dedicated to various deities, various gods and goddesses. He composed many kavyas, many philosophical texts on the Darshana Granthas, many commentaries on the Vedas, commentaries on the Upanishads. He wrote on logic, he wrote on the Nyaya Shastra, he wrote on Ayurveda, he wrote on astronomy and astrology, Jyotisha Shastra. He wrote on Akhyayikas, he created novels. And his letters are marvelous examples of art and science of writing letter. And he was, in fact, and not just a rishi, a poet, but a tremendous researcher. His research bent of mind could be measured by looking at one of his texts called Bharata Charitra Mimamsa, a text on Mahabharata. And in this text, he takes the contemporary views of many scholars of his time, and then he takes the ancient views, he makes a synthesis, and then presents his own view on many aspects of the Mahabharata, whether it is about the date of the Mahabharata, or the context, or the poet, or even many characters. Most important thing about this particular text, Bharata Charitra Mimamsa, is that where Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni has compiled around 200 mantras of Rigveda, and then he is interpreting these 200 mantras of Rigveda afresh to show the Vedic origin of many characters and events in the Mahabharata. It's a wonderful research work which is not yet translated, not yet read by many. He has created enormous amount of sutra literature. I think volume 5 and 6 out of these 11 volumes are entirely dedicated to the sutra writings of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni. So where one finds the sutras composed on yoga, sutras composed on Vyakarana, grammatical texts, sutras composed on the cosmology, sutras composed on the moral ethical values, the sutras composed on the philosophy of the creation, the sutras composed on dharma shastras. So plenty of writing, sutra writings that we find. So in sutra writings, very precisely, and this is again a very unique contribution of a Bharat, the Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, that in no other civilization, in no other nation, we have the sutra style of writings. In a very compact manner, very precise way, profound ideas and the profound realizations could be given expression to, like Patanjali's Yoga Sutra or Panini's Ashtadhyay. They're very compact work, yet containing much profound knowledge. So the first three volumes of collected works of Kavyakantha, Vāsiṣṭha, Gaṇapati Muni, they contain the stotra writings, the devotional literature. The fourth volume is again a verse composition on various aspects of Dharma Sutra, Vishwamimamsa, some of the moral ethical verses, and some of the historical texts like Bhruguvansha Itihas, etc. So, or some aspects of those. Also, like we will find it in the volume 11, some of the Prakirna Granthas where the shloka writings we find. The fifth and sixth volumes are entirely dedicated to sutra writings, and the seventh volume is entirely dedicated to his bhashya compositions. So the bhashya means the commentary on Rigveda, commentary on Upanishad, though he wished to write exhaustive commentaries on every mantra of Rigveda, which he could not complete. But whatever little he has given to us, we find some newness in that, some kind of very interesting and inspiring uh, elements which uh, gives us a very different level of understanding of how Veda has to be approached. Bhashya Bhumika there, and the Upanishad Bhashya, his Bhashya on Ishopanishads, and many of the writings of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi also, he has written commentary. So let me tell you another interesting aspect here, that Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni never believed in the apaurushayatva of the Veda, the way the Mimamsakas have treated with this aspect. So he believed that the Veda is something which gets revealed to the Purushas who are the Purushas who are living in a higher level of consciousness. That is called the apaurushayata. It is not something that some aliens, the Veda has been revealed to some uh, unknown entities, or it has just descended in some form, but it has got revealed to or revealed through those Purushas who have raised themselves by the power of tapas into the state of rishihood. But there can be rishis to whom the new mantras could reveal. It is not, Veda is not something static which keeps revealing itself. So this is where Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni had a disciple called Daivarata. And to Daivarata, many new mantras have revealed. And this is one of the brightest examples of the modern time, that how a new Veda was revealed to one of the disciples of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni. There is a text called Chhando Darshanam, which is published by Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. So this records, I mean, whenever this Guru and Shishya, Kavyakantha Gaṇapati Muni and Daivarata, they used to meditate. So these mantras used to reveal through Daivarata, and Gaṇapati Muni used to note it down and confirm that these are the new mantras getting revealed through him, and then he would write commentary on those mantras. How beautiful that the mantras are getting revealed to the Shishya, and the Guru is noting down, recording it, and then writing commentaries on it. This has been the beautiful Guru Shishya parampara of our Bharata Varsha. So So like this, we find in volume 7 many of his bhashyas and many of his commentaries on different texts, and volume 8 is dedicated to his writings on Ayurveda, certain aspects of the Tantra and the Jyotisha Shastra. So volume 9 is the Bharata Charitra Mimamsa, where we find his entire research and the new interpretation of the 200 Veda mantras to show various events and characters, or the Vedic origin of the various events and important characters of the Mahabharata. Volume 10 of the collected works of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni is a novel titled Purna. Purna means complete, perfect, but the novel itself is incomplete. But even though incomplete, it gives a sense of fulfillment. It is complete from various dimensions, where it's a kind of imaginary historical novel which is written in such a beautiful style that every diction, every style, every choice of words, and the presentation of the historical facts is very, very interesting to read a novel of the modern time. So, how he has incorporated many ancient dharma shastras, whatever is related to, say, Raja Dharma. So, those aspects are incorporated into a story form and then presented it through a novel. So, in fact, if anyone would like to understand the Samrajya Nibandhanam, all the different terminologies which he has created, all the different aspects that he has put in Samrajya Nibandhanam, a lot of ideas which are presented in Samrajya Nibandhanam. So one finds the application of those terminologies, application of those in the form of stories in Purna novel, which is another important text which needs to be studied, translated, annotated, discussed. So volume 11 of the collected works of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni has all his stray writings. So whatever was found later from different manuscripts are compiled there, which could not be accommodated along with any other texts which appeared in the previous volumes. Those are compiled and then put together in volume 11. So this is how one finds enormous amount of writings of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni in these 12 volumes. The volume 12 of the collected works, of course, is entirely the index volumes. So to deal a little bit with the quality of Kavyakantha Gaṇapati Muni's few of the writings. So as a scholar poet, we see in Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni that in all his writings, one finds this thoughts of his intense tapasya. The entire gamut of the literature contributed by Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, whether one is going through his stotra literature, whether one is going through his bhashya literature, whether one is going through his research documentation on Mahabharata, whether one is going through the novel that he has written, or any other writings, one finds that touch of tapasya, that touch of spiritual realization, or the spiritual force behind all his writings, which makes his writings very, very special. Very, very special. And especially, I would like to mention about a particular text, Dasa Mahavidya Sutra or Mahavidya Sutrani. Now, it is for the first time that we find in the Tantric tradition, because Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni himself was a Shakta Upasaka. He is a Sri Vidya Upasaka, and especially he used to do the sadhana of Chinnamasta. And his writings on the Tantra is not just based on some ancient Shastras. Of course, he refers to the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Tantric literature, but most importantly, it it becomes authentic because he himself had realized that truth by his own tapas. So, Mahavidya Sutrani, this particular text, where Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni puts together all the Dasha Mahavidyas, or the 10 great cosmic powers of the Divine Mother, into one place. If we go to the ancient tantric texts, we will find Kali Tantra separately, Tara Tantra separately, Bhuvaneshwari Tantra separately. But in Mahavidya Sutrani, we find all these Dasha Mahavidyas, the 10 different manifestations of the Divine Mother in one text. And this entire text is the realization how he has combined together the realizations of the ancient Siddhas, the ancient Rishis, and his own realization, and then put them together by by synthesizing this whole knowledge and giving the correspondence with the Tantra, Vedanta, and the Veda. All the Vedic, Vedantic, and Tantric tradition, they're synthesized. He has brought out the association of these 10 cosmic aspects of the Mother as described in the Tantra, the corresponding Vedic deities. For example, like when we say Kali, when we say Tara, when we say Bhuvaneshwari, Kamalatmika, Chinnamasta, Dhumavati, he shows the corresponding Vedic deity and which Veda mantra is associated with a particular Mahavidya. That also he mentions, so then those mantras can be practiced as a part of the sadhana of that particular Mahavidya. So he also shows not just the Vedas, in the Upanishads also, because the Upanishadic tradition also we find the Vidyas, description of various Vidyas, which are the manuals of sadhana. We find Samvarga Vidya, we find Bhuma Vidya, we find Upakoshala Vidya, we find various Vidyas, around 32 Vidyas described in the Upanishads itself. So as we find in ancient times, so there are many Dharma Shastrakaras, Smriti Shastrakaras, who could create new Shastras. For a long time, we find that in India, the Shastra writing or creation of new Shastras had taken a halt. So we always refer to the ancient Shastras, Dharma Shastras especially, and we do not find the new Dharma Shastras. This is where we can find that Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni was one of such rishis, one of such, great personalities who could give us some new Dharma Shastra. We can read Vāsiṣṭha Vivaha Dharma Sutra, Vāsiṣṭha Yoga Sutras, the way he has interpreted and then given to us many Vāsiṣṭha Dharma Shastra. He also presents the views of the previous acharyas, previous Dharma Shastrakaras, and then again says that iti Vāsiṣṭha. That means he is bringing some new elements into the Shastra, looking at the conditions in which he lived, looking at incorporating the Yuga Dharma, because the Yuga Dharma is important. He, as a Muni, as a Rishi, as a poet, as a yogi, he was well equipped with unique scholarship and unique power of expression. His language was extremely simple, rhythmic. The amount of metrical patterns that Kavyakantha Gaṇapati Muni has used in his verse compositions is immense. In his poetical compositions, around 5,000 verses he must have composed. And if we look at the classical Sanskrit poets, this whole gamut of classical Sanskrit poetry, we don't find any poet using more than 30 Chhandas. There must have been many others who could use few more Chhandas or metrical patterns, but Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni was perhaps one of the poets who has used 71 metrical patterns in his 5,000, more than 5,000 verses that he has composed. 71 Chhandas, metrical patterns, which itself is immense, and one can even make a study of these Chhandas and then how beautifully he has given expression to his inner experiences, realizations, feelings, emotions, sentiments so beautifully through these 71 metrical patterns. So his power of expression, his power to speak, he was a tremendously powerful orator. In 1922, as a part of his Chinnamasta sadhana, he had the Kapala Bheda experience. Very rarely people have Kapala Bheda. That means the skull is split and the whole energy from the Kundalini rises above through that split skull. This is called Kapala Bheda. And this has been a part of our uh, uh, tradition. So it was perhaps in the modern time the only Siddha who had the Kapala Bheda. It is said that after the Kapala Bheda experience, people leave their body. But when the smoke was emerging through the split skull of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi was reported, he came running and then he kept his hand on his head and then saved him. It happened in 1922. It was because of the blessings of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni could continue his life till 1936 when he left his body in Kharagpur, West Bengal. I would like to express my deep sense of gratitude to the divine to bring me in contact with this great rishi, Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni, whose writings have had tremendous impact, but tremendous amount of work is yet to be done with regard to the writings of Kavyakantha Vāsiṣṭha Gaṇapati Muni. धन्यवाद.